So, it's also very character driven, and it involves the paranormal, and there's some investigative kind of gameplay with Sam as she's trying to figure out what's going on. Um, how it's different is I think I would say it's a more mature story in terms of my path as a writer. It's Gabriel-Knight. At the time that we conceived of that, I think it was definitely sort of a comic book hero idea, and it has a much more literal translation of the paranormal. There are vampires and werewolves, and Gray Matter, I think, is subtler in that it's more based in real life and the powers of the mind and the paranormal in a much more realistic way. Before I started game design, I really loved the old Sierra games, of course, and it was kind of a dream come true to get to work with them. And I loved the LucasArts games as well. I was a big fan of Ron Gilbert at LucasArts. And I think some of the games that have influenced me more recently include Siberia 1 and 2. I really liked how seamless that was for the player. I felt it was something that was very approachable by a mass audience, and yet still had a lot of interest and a lot of depth. And there's been some really cool stuff being done in the casual game stuff. I'm a big fan of the Ravenhurst series in casual games because they're really approaching a full-blown adventure game, and they're, I just think, kind of cool and exciting. But I think probably in terms of my storylines, I'm more influenced by things that are not computer games. Like some of my favorite authors are Neil Gaiman, Stephen King, Anne Rice, and I really love a lot of TV shows like Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Lost and True Blood. So I think there's much more of a cinematic influence in my work. Well, this game is 2.5D. The backgrounds are done in 3D, but the camera doesn't move in real time. So, Gabriel-Knight 3 was just such a complicated game to stage because you always, so I think that in terms of an adventure game, it doesn't really add so much that it's worth all the extra time and effort that you have to put into it to make the camera move. It's almost like it's just overkill. And personally, I'd rather spend that production budget on more story and more puzzles. And I think what an adventure gamer really wants is just a beautiful environment. Well, we had, I was in San Diego, that's where I live, and so I was getting the demo reels through the email. And for a lot of the characters, first of all, this is the first game I've done voiceover work in London, and the talent pool here is just really world class. So I think even better than the games I've done in LA. The reels they send you, you're just like, well, yeah, we'll take that person. It's like, couldn't be any better than that. So it was a pretty seamless process. The one we did, probably Sam and David, of course, the main characters. We listened to a lot of different options, and for the person who's playing David, we actually had him, audition with the lines of the characters so we could make sure that, a lot of these people can do a million voices, but you want to make sure that they can really nail that particular one voice. So so that's how we did it, just by sending audio files back and forth. Well, the script has pretty much been intact since 2003. So it's been a long time in development, but the script, the main body of the characters and the puzzles and the dialogue has not changed much since it was originally written. But the first development team was struggling to implement the game, and So I think the biggest challenge when VisitOrBox took it over was just that, you know, when you inherit a game as opposed to developing it from scratch, you sort of have to live with the engine and the scripting and all the things that the previous team did. And it's almost more trouble, I think, than to just start over because, you know, you're struggling to kind of wedge things in to an existing system. So I think that's been a challenge. But, you know, the artists in VisitOrBox are just, I think, probably the best that I've worked with. So it's been really interesting to see they've been very enthusiastic about the project, which I'm grateful for. And I think they've put a lot of creative effort into it and made it look really interesting. It's been a really different project for me because in the big adventure games I've done in the past, I was right there with the team on site every day, you know, directing everything down to the last detail. And with this project, I'm obviously very remote from the team, and I have other stuff that I'm doing as well at the same time. So I've been much more, you know, involved on a high-level basis and have to really trust the team. And we have a designer on site who's working directly with the team, who's part of the French developer, and so he's my main contact. And so it's been a really different process for me to sort of let it go and trust that somebody else can do a good job with it. But I think it's been as good as it can possibly be. They've been really good about trying to understand and implement the vision. Yeah, I think it's very romantic Gothic. Again, it's kind of like, you know, the old Gothic novels where you know, we have this mysterious house and you know there's something going on with the house, but you don't understand what. And then the other big location is Oxford, but it's very rainy and kind of overcast and blowing wind, and so you get, I think, this dark, dreary effect that creates a romantic feeling. And I think what's interesting is that even, you know, you play Sam for the first 2 chapters, and so you begin to think that you've got a handle on what's going on with the house, but then in the 3rd chapter you switch to David, and it's like completely different than, you know, you have no idea that was what was really going on. So I think it has a very dark atmosphere throughout. I think it's, I won't say shockingly different, but it's really completely different. I mean, I think, again, when you play the first 2 chapters of Sam, you think you know kind of what the game's about and you're kind of going along, and then suddenly, you know, once you play as David, it's just completely different. I mean, not only is his mindset completely different, but the puzzles that he's doing are completely different. Sam is basically a survivor, and she's, I'm going to say quite a con man, but she's definitely a street performer. She'll say anything to anybody to get what she wants, and she also uses a lot of magic, so you actually have to put together magic tricks. And by magic, I mean, you know, sleight of hand, stage magician magic. And David's a neurobiologist, he's a scientist, so he's completely on his own experiments that he's doing, which Sam knows nothing about. And it's very much, again, sort of more about lab equipment and, you know, powers of the mind and, you know, investigating psi, and it's just completely different. So really, towards the end, they finally merge a little bit, but they're very, very different characters. Well, I really hope the game is successful enough that we will just all want to continue with the same publisher and the same development team, and, you know, just immediately write a new script, because, you know, like you said, it took so long for this project to kind of really get off the ground and find the right home, and it'd be nice to just roll right into another production. I do have a story idea in mind for the second game, and I do think that once you have used a team, it's much more efficient to just immediately use the same team, because they know you and they've got the engine worked out and the scripting worked out, and it can just go much more smoothly. Whereas when you're first starting on a new project, it seems like there's so much time wasted in the beginning just trying to figure out how to do what you're going to do, much less actually do it.